Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a video on how to clean and service your Singer 20U professional sewing machine. So before we get started, there are some key items that you're going to need in order to service your machine. The first one is sewing machine oil, a flathead screwdriver. So I've got two different types of screwdriver here. I've got one that you can have different attachments on, and I've also got the old Singer screwdriver that you can sometimes find or comes with older machines. A cleaning brush to get out all the dust bunnies. A pipe cleaner can also be useful. Might not be needed in all cases, but sometimes a pipe cleaner can be very useful. And a soft cloth to give your machine a wipe down when you're all done and to remove any excess oil. So when I service my machines, I like to start at the top and work my way down through the machine, and that way I don't miss anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top of the machine off, which involves undoing this screw here, and there's also a screw here. The screw here is quite a long screw. It'll come out eventually. There we go. And then just carefully lift the top off. Let me zoom you in. So as you can see in here, we've got all our gears. We've got the shaft that runs through the machine. This pad here needs to be nicely soaked in oil. It has still got quite a bit of oil on, but I will add some more. And obviously you've got all your the drive shaft and gear parts here. Right, I'm now going to start oiling this machine. I'm going to start from the back and work my way to the front. You've got a small hole here that is for oiling this shaft that goes to the hand wheel. You've got this item here. This is part of the obviously drive for the sewing machine that will need oiling. There is an oiling wick that comes down from this pad, but I will be adding more oil directly onto the shaft. There's a little oiling pad here that also has a wick that comes down from this pad. I will put some oil directly on here. There is a gear in here. I don't know if I can tilt you so you can see a little bit better. So you see that there's a cogged gear here. So today I'm just going to put some oil on that. You can also put lithium grease on there as well if you want to. I did that in the last service, so I'm just giving it a quick oil through today. And then I will also be adding oil to this big pad here. As well as oiling these other parts, I'm also going to put a little bit of oil on this mechanism here. This is what helps you adjust your zigzag. So I'll be oiling along here as well. You only ever need to use a few drops of oil. This is a well bedded in machine. If it was new, I might be a bit more liberal with it. But yeah, 1 or 2 drops of oil in all the key places, and it'll be fine. One of the ways to help the oil get into the machine is just by gently turning the hand wheel. And then you can also see the other areas where you might want some oil, such as in the back of here. I put quite a bit of oil on this pad because at the end of the day this is what helps keep your machine oiled between the services. Put 1 drop there, 1 drop there, and work that in. And that's the first part of the machine oiled. So now I'm going to oil the middle of the machine. As you can see, when I turn the zigzag selector, there's a little piece of metal on metal down here that needs to be oiled. We've got this mechanism here that's to be oiled, and then we've got some gears. Again, there is an oil wick here, but I will also be adding some oil into these areas because obviously the wick will oil it when it's working. There's also, as I turn this cog, there's a bottom gear here that will also need some oil. Again, I used lithium grease last time I serviced this machine, so for today I'm just going to be oiling it. Also see on this shaft here there is a tiny hole where you can drop some oil in as well, so I'll be putting just a drop of oil in there, and that helps keep the inner shaft nicely lubricated as well as it goes round and round. And a small drop in this area here. The main thing to think of when you're servicing your machine and oiling everything up is think, where does metal touch metal? So anywhere where metal touches metal, that's where we oil. So now I'm going to oil this part of the machine here. This is towards the front of the machine. So as you can see, the main drive shaft that drives the needle bar and everything runs all the way through here. So this is actually an oil port. That's also where that large screw falls in. So I'll be putting oil down here. I'll put a small amount of oil here and then some oil just in here. Can you see where the shaft is itself? So the next thing I need to do is I need to oil where the needle bar and everything is, which is under this panel here. So we need to remove this panel, which is very simple. Just take your screwdriver, loosen this screw at the top a little, and then remove, there's a screw at the bottom here. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a screw just there, and we remove that screw there. And then this panel just slides off. Quite hard for me to show, but there are a number of things in here that need to be oiled to keep the machine moving smoothly and nicely. So at the back of here, there is a bar that lifts up and down, this one here. And this also has a small oil hole in that lines up with this hole here. You've got this piece here. Again, it's got a small oiling point on it that you can use. In the back of here, because there's a link, small link arm between this piece and this piece. Again, more oil there. You've got metal on metal here where everything rotates. This will need oiling. This main drive shaft here, we've already oiled this from the other side. We've got an oiling point here. This is part of our zigzag control. Okay, you've got a pivot point up here. Let me just show you that with the oiling point. So again, you've got an oiling point here. That's part of the zigzag control. And then higher up, you've got another pivot point. This will need to be oiled. You've got your presser foot area where your presser foot is lifted up and down. Okay, again, that will need to be oiled. So all these moving parts need some oil on them. And there is in here as well, behind the presser foot spring, a small piece that needs to be oiled. So let's make a start. Sometimes this is also where your cloth will come in handy, because you can just place this under your presser foot so it will catch any drips of oil. So I work my way from the top to the bottom because I just find it easier. And I do this methodically to make sure I get all the pieces. This here is part of your tension unit. So there is a small lever on that in the back of here. Let's see if I can get a better view on this side of what needs to be oiled. So this is your lift for your presser foot. So we just put a little bit of oil in here and on the back of here where it touches the bar. I need to lift my needle bar slightly in this machine because it is quite low at the moment. We oil around the base of the needle bar where it goes through. So need to oil a needle shaft that runs up and down here. So we just need to put a small drop of oil on here. You don't need too much oil on your needle shaft because if you're not careful it will run down and run onto your needle. You need to make sure that you wipe off any kind of excess oil. As you can see, there's the odd drop of oil dropping off my needle right now. Move that up and down. So that's the upper part of the machine oiled. I just need to put a spot in the top of here because I missed that bit. And then around the screw threads for the pressure foot pressure. So I'll wind that down and up a few times. There we go. And that is the entire upper body of the machine oiled. I'm going to take my cloth, wipe off any excess I can see that's dribbling down. Yeah, because we don't want excess oil dripping down our needle, so that when we do our next project we get a great big oil splot. So that's the top part of the machine oiled. I'm now going to put all that together and we're going to do the feed dog area under here and the underside of the sewing machine. So obviously I will tilt the machine back for that. So the next part of the machine that I'm going to clean out is around the bobbin area. So what I need to do is I need to remove my needle and my presser foot. So then I've got easy access to remove the feed dog plate, this side plate, and then we can get down into the bobbin area to clean the bobbin area out of any fluffs and check that it's all good in there. I'm going to keep my needle to one side safe because I've not had that needle long in the machine. When you clean and service your machine, it's also a good time to replace your needles. Needles should be replaced roughly every 8 hours of sewing. As I say, that needle hasn't done that much, so I will be putting that needle back in. So that's your needle and your presser foot out. Now I'll be undoing these two screws here to be able to remove the feed dog faceplate. I'm using the small single screwdriver to do this. If you find access is a little bit tight, one thing that I do sometimes with some of the other machines I've got is I will take one of these screwdriver ends, and it's also got a small mini wrench, and I will use that to undo the screws here. I might not even use the mini wrench. Sometimes I just use my finger and undo the screws like this because it's quite easy, particularly if you've got a machine where access to get in is quite tight. I know people, particularly in America, that they will get the tools normally used for undoing screws in guns and for gun cleaning and use those to be able to get into the sewing machine because they are designed to get into small tight spaces. So now those screws are out, we'll just put them to one side so they're safe. We don't want to lose those screws. I'm going to open this plate here, lift out the face plate. I'm just going to give that a quick wipe down because obviously a bit of oil has dripped down from above onto the face plate. And then I'm going to remove this side plate. It just pops out dead easy. It's got a little clip on it. If you find it's a bit stiff, just put your screwdriver under there and flick it up. So the next thing I'm going to do as well is I'm going to take my bobbin case out because I have got thread in there. And let's have a look what we've got going off in here. As you can see, my feed dogs and bobbin area are quite clean. I've recently put the feed dogs back into this machine because I have been using it for free motion embroidery. But if you've got any fluffs in there, this is where you take your nice bristly brush and you just sweep them all out, give it a good clean, get into all the nooks and crannies, because you don't want fluff bunnies building up in this area. What happens if you get too much fabric fluff in here is it will stop feeding your fabric through nicely. It could jam up your bobbin area. There's lots of different things. I've had a machine where a tiny bit of thread got into the hook mechanism and it jammed the whole hook mechanism up, and I had to take the whole thing to pieces to get this tiny piece of thread out in order to get the machine working. And then obviously you've got to reset your timing and everything, which is a bit of a pain. So we check that that's all spinning nicely. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop a little bit of oil in here. You can't see it very well on this video, but just behind the hook eye mechanism here, where it joins the shaft, there is a tiny little hole so that you can oil that area. So I'm just going to do that now. I'm going to put a tiny little blob of oil down there. It's quite difficult to get into. You do have some of these holes here, like this one and this one, that can be used for in-between oilings, between servicing your machine, and they can be quite useful at times. So now I've got that area nice and clean, I'm going to put it all back together. Before I put it back together, I've just had a thought. This is a really good time to check for any kind of wear within this area. So check that your feed dogs are moving nicely and they're not loose. Sometimes these little screws can come loose, particularly if you're taking them in and out a lot when you're doing free motion embroidery. So if you've got one machine and you're switching between different things that you're doing with that machine, you know, they can work their way loose. So we check they're nice and tight. We check there's no excessive play in the feed dogs because they can wear underneath. And then obviously you will get a big wobble, but these are nice, these are secure. We check our bobbin hook area, that's fine. There's a little bit of side to side play, that's perfectly normal, that's perfectly fine. There's no front to back play, and that's what we want. So we know that all this area is working really nice and smooth. And then I'm going to put this all back together now. So obviously to fit it back together, we just reverse the process that we did previously. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my feed dog plates in. Make sure you get them the right way around. So the thicker side sits to the right, the thinner side sits to the left. I like to put my feed dog plate in first before I put my side plate in, because I just find it helps everything sit back together nicely. And we just screw those back in. Make sure your screws are going in straight. The last thing you want is these to get cross-threaded. You don't want any little bits of these screws sticking up either, because it will catch on fabric when you're sewing. So just screw them down till they're sort of finger tight and nice and level with the faceplate. You don't have to, be careful not to over tighten these screws. You don't have to tighten them up so they're super duper mega tight. I mean, you can check as you sew whether they're working the way loose or anything, but the main thing is that it's nice and secure in place. Yep, so that's nice and even. There's no sticky outy bits. Put my side plate in there, clip that in, and close that up for now. I'll put my bobbin back in later. I'll probably be using a different coloured thread, so I need to change my bobbin out. I'm going to put the foot on. Just tighten this side screw up. Again, you want it to be tight enough your foot's not going to drop off when you're sewing, but at the same time it doesn't have to be ridiculously tight that it's a pain to undo next time. And you take your needle, make sure it's facing the right way around when you put it in. These needles have a groove down the front of them, so I just generally stick my thumb in there to make sure that that is the front of the needle. Everything's rolling off. Hang on a minute. Put a needle in. Come here a little bit. There we go. I find that front groove again, so I know my needle is facing forwards. Because obviously these machines thread front to back. I need to make sure the needle is in the right way around or it won't sew. We tighten our little screw there. I'm just going to give it a little wipe down nicely, and that's your bobbin area back together. The next thing I want to do is tilt the machine back so that I can access the underside of the machine. These machines are quite heavy, so please be careful when you do that. You don't want to cause yourself a mischief. Just lean back on its hinges, and as you can see, you've now got the full underside of the machine on show. So now I've got the underside of the machine on show. I'm just going to do a quick visual check, make sure there's no damaged parts, and give it a quick turn, make sure everything's moving freely. And then I'm going to set to oiling. As you can see, there's quite a bit of oil that has run down from above, so I'm going to wipe up all this old oil first. There's also some old oil, as you can see here, in the catch tray, so I'm going to be cleaning that out as well. Sometimes you'll also find your catch tray gets little bits of broken pins, threads, all sorts in it, so it's nice to keep it clean and tidy. So I'm just giving everything a quick wipe down. So my catch tray is particularly grotty today, I don't know why. It's amazing what your oil trays can catch. So as previously, like I did with the top, I will start from the back and work my way to the front. That's just my preference of how I work. That just works for me. You can start at the front and work to the back, but I obviously try and keep a methodical method because it helps you make sure that your machine is thoroughly cleaned and oiled. So what we've got in the back of here, we've got this shaft here that turns as the needle goes up and down. This runs your feed dogs. So this shaft here, as you turn your needle up and down, will move to feed your feed dogs back and forth. You've got these two ginormous cogs here, the gear cogs, that obviously help drive your bobbin case as your needle moves. I did lithium grease these last time I serviced the machine. So again, like I did with above, I will just give them an oil this time. We've got this shaft here. Okay, that will need oiling at this end as well. And then obviously you've got this shaft that runs through that drives your bobbin area. And this will need oiling at the points where it enters the machine. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.